Hey everyone, it's Greg and it's Unbreakable Spirits. And it is Wednesday, August the 9th, Hump Day. And uh, what a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. It's cool and it's crisp. It's sort of a taste of autumn in August. So enjoy it while it lasts. I hope it's nice where you are too. Um, Couple things today. I heard that somebody won that big lottery last night. Wow, one person, one ticket in Florida. Yeah, so it's not me. It's not me. Um, but that's good news. You know, they're saying, the old thing was, okay, it's $1 billion, $1.5 billion that this person won. $1 billion. Uh, they might be able to buy like a sports franchise or who knows, right? All kinds of stuff. What would you buy if you won over $1 billion? I don't know what I would buy. Certainly, like new post-it notes, uh, all the baseball caps in the world, things that I like, things I collect. The thing with me is I would go crazy and buy houses and boats and go on lavish vacations and I mean all that's nice. Don't get me wrong. If you have a boat out there, you have like 12 houses or don't get me wrong. I mean that's good, but I would probably be a little more practical and I don't know, maybe a toaster. I don't know. But anyway, one person in Florida won it, and you know, they're saying the old way was okay. You hit a big jackpot like this, you take the money right away. There's two ways you could do it. You could break up that big jackpot into uh, yearly subs of like and I think it's like 30 years or something. They give you so much per year, and that's what you get. But you get the whole thing. You get the whole 1.5 billion, but they break it up. The other option is to take only part of it, but you get your money right away up front. You get the money. You don't have to wait 30 years. You can spend it all if you want. And, people were like, well, that's the way to do it. Get the money. Who knows if you're going to live in 30 years? Get the money. You could do whatever you want with it. Put it in the bag, treat your family and friends, whatever. But now, they're kind of saying, and I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't know what you think is that you should take the annuities, take the little bit of a year. And here's the reason why. Number one, you get the whole thing, the whole 1.5 billion, rather than maybe a maybe a measly 500 million, measly peanuts. Um, the other thing is, by only getting so much a year, it really puts the limits on you because people get money sometimes and they go crazy. They spend. They don't know what to do with it because maybe they've never had it, and they go broke. How many stories have we heard of people who win the lottery or a big jackpot at the casino, and then they spend it all, they blow it all. So I guess in that way, if you take the annuity, or something every year for the next 30 years, it kind of protects you in a way. But I would say, though, this is my advice to the person out there who I'm sure is watching me, who has won the lottery today, the 1.5 billion. I'm sure you're out there watching. Um, my advice to you, if you're over 90 years old, is take the money fast. Take it fast. Anyway, let's hope that somebody who really needed the money won, and maybe they're young enough to enjoy it. So whatever. Just I mean, I look at it this way: if you're 94 years old and you won $1.5 billion, buy all the prune juice you want, everything. Just buy it all. Go crazy. Anyway, oh my God, there was a little disturbing news today. I heard on the radio. Harvard did uh, did a research recently on soda, and it just came out, and it's their findings was women, specifically women who between the ages of 50 and 70 years old, uh, if you have even one bottle or can of soda per day, your risk of liver cancer go up dramatically. That's only one a day. Uh, I've known people who I worked with who were soda addicts just all day long. They would finish a Coke or a Dr. Pepper, and then the next you'd see them run into the machine and all that they were just, going crazy on soda. They said the equivalent in all that sugar, in a can of soda is like 10 teaspoons full of sugar per can. That's a lot of can. That's a lot of sugar. And imagine drinking that all day, right? Well, here at Harvard is saying one can a day significantly raises your risk of getting liver cancer. So that's not good. I would rethink that and maybe start drinking water. Water, Uh, Speaking of which, did you hear this? The state of New Jersey, just proclaimed that their state juice, everything has a state this, state that, state tree, state blah blah blah. State juice is cranberry juice. Can you believe that? New Jersey, come on. Cranberry juice? Really? That sucks. I the thing I think about a cranberry juice is when you have a urine. This isn't funny, but when you have a urinary tract infection, you have kidney stones or something, uh, they say the best thing to do. I've had kidney stones before. It's no fun. The best thing to do is drink cranberry juice. It sort of soothes the lining of your, whatever down there. And yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so New Jersey cranberry juice, huh? Okay, okay. I don't know if I'm Jersey. I like Jersey. I like Jersey. Jersey tomatoes, Jersey corn. Jersey has a lot of good stuff. But cranberry juice, yeah, I don't know about that. Hey, you know what? There's a uh, there's a recent revival of interest in the 1980s. I love the 1980s. That was my decade. I had so much fun in the 80s. And what was cool about the 80s for me was I don't think I broke any bones in the 80s, which was like unreal for me, because the late 50s, 60s, 70s, I was breaking all the time, break fractures all the time. In the 80s, I don't know. I guess I just got a little older and things were going good. I love the 80s. And, think of the 80s, right? What were you doing during the 80s? Uh, I was in college, and I remember it as being a decade of big hair. Everybody had all this hair. Uh, TV shows like Dallas and Dynasty, and money. It was a very material girl, Madonna, right? And MTV, Live Aid, you know, uh, great movies too. Some of my favorite movies: Back to the Future, uh, Beetlejuice, which they're making Beetlejuice 2 now. Uh, and it's supposed to come out next year, pending this writer strike. But I love the '80s, and I was thinking about the '80s, and I love '80s music, and I was thinking, what were my favorite albums in the '80s? What were your favorite albums in the '80s? Um, and I actually found a list of Rolling Stone at the end of that decade did they got all kinds of musicians together, DJs, people in the music business, and they did a poll of what were the top 100 albums of the 1980s. And I'm not going to read you the whole list. You could Google it, look it up. But it was sort of interesting when I was going down the list. How many great albums were in the '80s? The '80s were, think of it this way, the '50s were when rock and roll really started. Buddy Holly, and it was just great. '60s were the Beatles, of course, and British Invasion, and late in the '60s you had groups like the Who, and '70s or '70s was sort of a mishmash. You had disco at the end of the '70s. You had these big heavy metal bands and arena rock bands like Journey and Aerosmith. You know, uh, and a lot of singer songwriters started in the '70s. James Taylor, Jim Croce. Uh, so the '80s were an interesting time because we came out of the disco era and rock returned. But I think in the '80s more like synthesizers and and but there were a lot of good albums. I mean, think about it. Of course, Michael Jackson's Thriller was the biggest selling album of all time. Um, and that was in 1982. Um, It was a great album. No matter what you think of Michael Jackson, it was a great album. And Bad, which came after it, was another great album. But and then you had Michael Jackson's. It seemed like it was Michael Jackson versus Prince for most of the '80s. And I just love Prince. Prince was sort of the bad boy to Michael Jackson. He. But they could do everything. These guys, they could dance. Now, one thing like Prince could do that Michael Jackson could never do was play guitar. If you ever heard Prince play guitar, you'll know what I'm talking about. Google the Rock Hall of Fame when Prince does While My Guitar Gently Weeps with, I think he's with Tom Petty, and it's just a great, great band. But Prince does this solo of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and it's fantastic. He was just a great musician, great songwriter, performer, and he was one of the only artists who had 4 albums in the top 100 and of not best selling, but the most popular albums in the decade of the 1980s. And Purple Rain made it to number 2. And I'll give you a few minutes. You think about what number 1 could have been. It wasn't Thriller. Thriller was 6. It wasn't Purple Rain. Purple Rain was 2. You had other great albums on there, like Graceland by Paul Simon was a great album. Faith, George Michael, great album. And then you had, you know, I think the emergence of really good female singers. I mean, think about it. Tina Turner came back with Private Dancer, just terrific album. Uh, Cyndi Lauper, uh, with She's So Unusual. That was another great album. Um, Madonna, of course, ruled the '80s, uh, and she had so many hits. Madonna. You know what? Madonna was a really good businesswoman. Yeah, say what you want about Madonna, but she knew what she was doing, you know? She was a great businesswoman. She knew how to promote herself and her assets, so to speak. Uh, she was all over MTV. Madonna was everywhere, you know. Uh, so there were so many great albums that came out of the 80s, you know. Can't Slow Down. Lionel Richie was another great album. So many. But the number one album of the decade of the 1980s was London Calling by The Clash. And I mean, I like The Clash, rock the Casbah, rock the Casbah. But they weren't my favorite group. Um, and London Calling was my favorite album. But, to each his own, everybody has their own opinion, so to speak. Uh, but I love the 80s revival. I really do. Um, One last thing. I was thinking about this TV show, and I bet you a lot of people out there watching me or listening to me watch this show. Now, this wasn't the 80s. This show ran from 1966 until 1971. And the show I'm talking about was called Dark Shadows. Do you remember Dark Shadows? Uh, it used to be my favorite show back in the day. I remember we would get home from school and we would put Dark Shadows on late in the afternoon. Think it came on at 4 o'clock after General Hospital. Uh, and Dark Shadows was just, it scared the shit out of me. It was for those of you who don't know, Dark Shadows was a soap opera, and it was set in Collinswood, Collinsport, Maine, and it followed the Collins family, their trials and tribulations, and like a regular soap opera. Only this show, Dark Shadows, had a horror theme. There were vampires and there were werewolves and there were ghosts and zombies, and parallel universes and time travel and werewolves, and it was just so cool. It was a very cheaply done show because the budget was tight, and so these actors they may fluff a line, and they had to keep going because they couldn't reshoot it. But every day was on every weekday, and they did over 1,200 episodes. Can you believe it? And it was on ABC every day. And then after it ran its course on ABC, yeah, you could find it late night on some of these UHF stations. Remember UHF? These fuzzy stations that you would get in there. And I remember Dark Shadows used to be on where I live late at night. So talk about a double whammy. You have Dark Shadows being really a scary, scary show, a very atmospheric, what am I trying to say? Whatever. It was a very haunting show. And not only that, you had it on late at night, like 11:30 at night for a half an hour before you went to bed. Uh, yeah, I had to keep the lights on. I mean, what could I say? Uh, but I loved it because Jonathan Frid played Barnabas Collins. He was the vampire who came from England, and he came to modern day Maine and set up shop there and started biting people, drinking their blood. And he was just a cool guy. What could I say? But the storylines were really bizarre. There was a lot of time travel where they went back in time to the colonial days because this witch put a spell on Barnabas and she cast him as a vampire. He was doomed forever. And then Barnabas hooked up with this female doctor who tried to cure him of his vampirism. But in the end, he ended up biting her too. And then, I think Barnabas bit everybody in the cast eventually. Uh, he had this coffin which was buried in the cellar, and he would pop in there during the day, take a little nappy, and then come out at night and prowl around it. Anyway, the score, you get Alexa to play it. Theme from Dark Shadows was very scary. It was just a cool show. So I was thinking of that, and the reason I bring that up was because I just found out that if you have Amazon Prime, you can actually stream every single freaking episode of Dark Shadows, all 1,267 or whatever of Dark Shadows. So watch it, you know. The pre-Barnabas shows, which went on for like 10 months in 1966 when the show first started, are good. It's basically really a boring thing with it's kind of a uh, typical soap opera kind of thing. But 10 months in, the uh, Barnabas years, as they call them, those are the years you want to watch. Uh, those are the good times. And then when Jonathan Freed apparently had a squabble with the producers, he wanted more money, blah blah blah. You know how that goes. He left the show, and after he left the show, the whole thing went downhill. You know, they tried to get this guy in who was Quentin, who was a werewolf. He couldn't carry Barnabas's jock. Just and so the show went downhill after. But it spawned a couple movies too. House of Dark Shadows, Return of Dark Shadows, Son of Dark Shadows, Bride of Dark Shadows. No, I'm getting my horror movies mixed up. But you know, it was very popular. And then they remade it again, Tim Burton, with Johnny Depp playing Barnabas Collins. And it wasn't as good. It kind of sucked. It was a flop, which it should have been, because there's no way you touch a classic. You know, that's Hollywood's problem. They're always trying to redo that. Some things are best left alone. You know, just leave it alone. And that's what they tried to do with Dark Shadows, and it didn't work. So now you'll be able to watch the original episodes on Amazon Prime, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You know, and, so enjoy it. It's going to scare you to death. Okay, well, I think that's about it for today. That's enough. And so I'll be back tomorrow with more of this stuff. And I hope you guys have a great hump day, and enjoy the weather and take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye bye. See you.